everyone. This is Stephen Balch, your instructor for Introduction to Computer Applications at Ozarka College. Today what I'm going to do is give you just a little bit of feedback on the Excel Module 1 activities that I finished grading this morning. And then I'm going to tell you what we've got coming up due for Excel Module 2 next week. Okay. So the first thing is, like I said, I did finish grading the Excel Module 1 assignments this morning. I had graded everything yesterday up to the point where I left my office. Of course, the work was due last night, so those of you that turned stuff in late yesterday, I finished grading those assignments this morning. Most of you did well on the Excel Module 1 assignments. And like I always tell you, I really appreciate those of you that are putting the time and effort in. So keep up the good work on that. There were some common errors made on the assignments that I'm going to go over in just a few minutes. But overall, like I said, most of you did extremely well. So just keep up the good work on that. Now, there were a couple of, like I said, there were a couple of common things that I noticed that I want to cover very quickly. The first thing is, there were a few of you that instead of using the sum button to enter the totals into the worksheet, or instead of using the formula that it gave you to get the net value on assignment 1, instead of doing that, you just inserted, you used the keyboard to just insert the numerical value for the total or the calculated value. The reason that you don't want to do that, there are a couple reasons, but the main thing is that you must put in the formula or function that it specifies in order for the calculation to actually be done in Excel, and for any kind of updates to the worksheet later on to be automatically have those calculated values recalculated when you make changes to the worksheet. So when you just put in the calculated value, it's just a static entry in that cell, just like if you just inserted text in that cell. It'd be no different. So Excel treats calculations much differently than it does other data in cells. And so you really need to remember that when it says to put in a sum function to get a total, or a formula to get a calculated value, make sure that you actually go through the steps to insert those formulas and functions. Like I said, it makes updating the worksheet later on much easier, much faster, because then you don't have to go back and recalculate by hand when you make changes to the worksheet. So, and we will be making changes to the worksheet and learning some more advanced formulas and functions in modules 2 and 3. And so it's very critical, those of you that had a problem with inserting formulas and functions, it's very important to learn that process and make sure you're doing it properly, because when we get, like I said, to modules 2 and 3, you're going to be learning even more complicated, more advanced formulas and functions, and it's going to be very critical that you actually use the formula or function so that it recalculates as you make changes to the worksheet. Also, in addition to making the changes, that it automatically recalculates when you make changes to the worksheet, when you have the formulas and functions in the right cells in the worksheet. It also, when you make changes to the worksheet, if you have the correct formulas and functions in, and you've set up your chart correctly, it will redo the chart for you as well. So any graphical representation of the data that you've got in your chart or in your worksheet will automatically be redone, redrawn basically, when you update the worksheet with new values, new numerical values. And so just kind of keep that in mind. It's very, very important that we actually input the formulas and functions in the worksheet, and we don't just type in the calculated values. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of using Excel to make our work with keeping track of financial and numerical data much more efficient and effective. Okay? All right. Another thing I noticed is some of you had some issues creating the chart correctly. There were a few of you that didn't get the correct ranges selected when you created your chart. And I've got an Excel workbook here that I'm going to open up here. So when you, let me go back to the actual worksheet here. Like I was saying before with the formulas and functions, just make sure, like on this particular worksheet, you had the row totals, you had the column totals, and then you had the net value here in row 19. And a good way to check your formulas is you can press the Control accent mark keys on your keyboard, and it will toggle to the formulas version of the worksheet, and then you can check all the formulas and functions that you have in your worksheet and check them for accuracy before you submit your work for a grade. All right, let me toggle back here. And then, like I was saying with the chart, some of you didn't get both ranges selected when you created your chart. Anytime you create a chart, there's going to be at least two ranges that you're going to need to select. You're going to need to select one range that is going to identify each piece of the pie, for example, in the pie chart that we created. So when we look at the chart, in order to actually have the legend that identifies each piece of the pie in the chart, we've got to select that range that tells Excel that these are the categories. That's what's called the categories range, is because it basically tells Excel what categories we want to include as the pieces of the pie in the chart. In this case, a pie chart. Okay. The other element that you need in order to create a chart is you need to have Excel understand how big each piece of the pie should be that represents each of those categories. And that's the second range that you select when you create a chart. That's called the values range. And it discusses all this in your textbook, but you need both of those. If you just select one of those out of the two, you're going to have a chart that's either going to be not labeled at all, or you're going to have a chart that has the wrong sizes for the pieces of the pie, or a combination of both if you don't select either of the ranges correctly. All right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Always make sure that after you create the chart and you're looking at the chart in your workbook, check it. Make sure, check it against the example in the textbook. Make sure that it has the appropriate labels or categories that represent each piece of the pie. Also, make sure that the sizes of each piece of the pie, each pie piece is correct. All right? And it's very easy to check that. For every assignment, it shows you exactly what the chart should look like. Okay? So make sure that you're checking that. All right? Another thing I noticed that's not as important, but it is still an important thing to look at, is when you go in to create your chart and you're and actually not when you're creating it, but when you're moving it to a new page, a new sheet in the worksheet, you always want to make sure that you use the As New Sheet option on the Move Chart dialog box. Okay? Always make sure that you're using that As New Sheet option, because if you just don't pay attention to that dialog box and you just don't make a change on the dialog box, it's going to default to a embedded chart in the workbook or in the worksheet. And so anytime it says to create a new sheet for the chart and put the chart on a page by itself, you always want to make sure you select the As New Sheet option on the Move Chart dialog box. Okay, and anytime you create a chart and you're able to see the grid lines behind your chart on the sheet that's created when you create your chart, if you're able to see the grid lines behind it, that means you did it incorrectly. It should look just like mine up here if you do it correctly, where you see no grid lines behind it. Because this is, when you choose As New Sheet, it creates a new sheet specifically for the chart that is not set up as a worksheet. It's set up as specifically as a sheet for the chart itself. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Those were just a couple of things that I noticed. One other thing that I'll mention very quickly is on any of the assignments where it has you open up a data file and make changes to the data file. For example, on assignment 2, it had you open up an existing workbook and then make changes to the worksheet and move the chart to a new sheet. Anytime it has you make changes to an existing workbook, make sure that what you're submitting as your assignment that I'm going to grade, make sure you're actually submitting the updated version of the workbook and not the original data file. There were a few of you that just submitted the data file without the changes being made to it. And that basically is a 0% because you didn't do any of the changes that it wanted you to make to the workbook. So just make sure you're checking your files before you submit them to make sure that you're submitting the correct file. Okay? All right. So that's basically all I have to say about the Excel Module 1 assignments. If you're still having some problems with what we learned about in Module 1 in Excel, if you're still having some problems, for example, with the formulas or the functions or creating the charts, just let me know and I'll be glad to help you out. I'll be glad to explain it a little bit further so that you can understand it better. But just let me know and I'll be glad to help you with that. The other thing about Excel Module 1 that I wanted to mention very quickly was the objective test. Most of you did well on that, but just as a reminder, you can take those tests as many times as you want to up until the due date. Your highest grade is automatically recorded, so just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so that brings us to what we've got coming up due next. So let's go to the activities page in my Ozarka, and right now we are on week 7 of the semester. All right, we don't have anything else due this week because we just had work due last night. So, but we do have work due next week. So you should be right now working on Excel Module 2. In Module 2, you're going to learn about some more complex formulas and functions. We just kind of, in Module 1, we just kind of gave a general introduction. We were just kind of introduced to Excel, and we learned about some very easy, some very common formulas and functions. But in Module 2, we're going to learn about some more complex formulas and functions. You're going to learn about something, you're going to learn about how you have to, in order to override certain mathematical calculations and have certain calculations be done before others, you have to put what you want done first in parentheses. So you're going to have some, like I said, more complex formulas like that. All right? So you're going to learn about, for example, the order of operations as well. You know, which mathematical computations are done first in a formula. All right? So just kind of be working through Module 2. The Module 2 work is due by Thursday of next week, October 10th. So you've got a little over a week to be working on Excel Module 2. As you're working through Module 2, if you have questions, I would like you to use the Excel Module 2 help discussion item right here under week 8. That way, when I answer your question, other students in the class will be able to see my answers to your questions, and it may help other students in the class that have similar questions. Okay? So just kind of remember that that discussion item is available there. As you're working through Module 2, again, also, let me go to the Assignment 1 page here for Excel Module 2. Make sure you're carefully reading through the instructions that I've posted here. Also, make sure that you understand or remember that there are demonstration videos available under the Resources heading at the bottom of the assignment page. And on the demonstration videos, I show you step by step how to set up the worksheet. For example, how to enter all the column titles and row titles and the data, how to insert each of the formulas and functions. And so if you're having a hard time working through the textbook and reading the instructions and following those, then that's where the demonstration videos can help you to get you through, completing Assignment 1. And then once you've completed Assignment 1, Assignments 2 and 3 are going to be very similar. So you're going to be able to take what you learned from Assignment 1 and apply it to completing Assignments 2 and 3. All right? So just kind of keep all that in mind. Also, make sure that you carefully check all your formulas and functions before you submit your assignments. Check all the formatting. Basically check everything that you had to do to create that workbook and that worksheet within the workbook. Make sure that you check it all for accuracy before you submit it. If you have any problems or if you have any questions, again, let me know and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have or help you out in any way I can. All right? Let's see. And I think that's all I have for you for today. So be working on Excel Module 2 and have a good week and a good weekend. And I will probably not talk to you again in a video until probably late next week. Okay? Probably Friday of next week after that Excel Module 2 work is due. Okay? So I will see you then. Thank you.